Congress is going to be back in town next week, and one of the first things that they'll have to look at is the budget resolution for 2012 and beyond. Right now, of course, they've been debating the continuing resolution, which just takes care of appropriations for the rest of this year, but pretty soon they're going to have to take up the budget resolution. The president put out his budget. CBO says it would result in very high deficits for the coming decade or so, and so the Republicans in the House will be taking their shot at it. But it's not going to be that easy. They've got some challenges, too. Why don't you tell us about some of those obstacles?
Yeah, I mean, the first obstacle is that the economy is still pretty sluggish, and so that just makes the fundamentals of the deficit and how that's projected pretty bad to start out with. So they can't do much about the economy in the budget, at least, because they don't score it to have dramatic improvement in the economy.
So a bad economy means lower revenues and higher spending on income support programs, food stamps, all the Medicaid, things like that. Yeah,
and revenues are extraordinarily low right now, much lower than the historical average. So as that comes up, the deficit fundamentals improve a little bit, but not nearly enough to get them to where they can show major improvement in the deficit for the next 5 years or the next 10 years. And so that leaves them with some policy choices that they may be reluctant to make, because in the election they really put on the table some major cuts to non-defense discretionary programs, but didn't say much about the mandatory spending programs that are the largest programs in the budget. And they also tended to agree that defense should be left relatively untouched.
And tax cuts?
Oh, well, tax cuts have to be extended, and there's, I would say, major reluctance to even consider raising revenues through any vehicle. We've looked at a few different scenarios here, and one of them is if they really drastically cut non-defense discretionary programs and really cut, something like $2 trillion or something just out of the non-defense discretionary budget. Even doing that while you're extending the tax cuts and some of these other policy continuations don't get them anywhere close to lowering levels of debt over even the next 10 years.
So you'd have to get into not only defense but into the sacred entitlement programs like Social Security, Medicare, and others, and Medicaid.
Yeah, and the hard thing there is that there's a general consensus that any major changes to those entitlement programs should be phased in so that it doesn't dramatically affect current beneficiaries. So that means over a budget window of 5 to 10 years, you really can't expect very much savings.
So even if you're aggressive on the spending side and extending all of the tax cuts, you'd probably still end up with big deficits. So the Republicans may end up through a different route at kind of the same place that the White House ends up.
Yeah, and all of those end up with not making much progress on the debt and the deficits.
So what do you have to do?
So, I think what the obvious answer is you have to be patient to some degree, and then you have to put in plans that over the longer term can start to reduce deficits. And you have to have all options on the table. You have to be willing to increase revenue. You have to be willing to look at all of the different spending programs in the federal budget.